What's going on YouTube? We are back with another video. Today's video, basically, it's the question that's the elephant in the room, and that question would be, was it worth it? Was it worth it to take a car that is doing nothing but going straight up, skyrocketing in the market, and cutting it up? Now, to be fair here, I didn't at the time necessarily buy it during the markup, if that makes sense. So right after I had purchased it, they started blowing up, and it was the same time that I just sold my Raptor 700, which they started blowing up in price, value wise. And yeah, so I kind of screwed myself a little bit, but not really, because these things are a fucking blast. So we'll get into that here in just a second. And Tyler, I know you're watching, so let's get down to the nitty gritty here. Obviously, if you're purchasing one of these cars nowadays, it's really not worth it to cut up, because I mean, you're not gonna, if you were to resell, you're not gonna make anywhere near what you are paying for these cars at this market that they're at the moment. I mean, if you jump on Facebook right now, you're probably not going to find a Miata for under, $3,000, and if you do, it's a complete pile of shit, and those are going to be the ones that you want to get. But at the same time, not necessarily what you want to get, because I mean, I got lucky on this one. I picked it up for $600 as a full Miata. I sold everything I could off of it, making back all of that money that I paid, and then some. The thing that I got lucky on, though, is all I did to get it to run was, and it had sat in a barn for years, if you're new to the channel, it hadn't ran. So the barn started falling apart and rotted out the soft top, which in turn rotted out the floor pan. That's why there's a caution sign there, because there is a Flintstone-sized hole there. And all the plug wires rotted out. The plugs were junk, so I changed the plugs, put plug wires on. What the hell else did I do at that time? The slave cylinder for the clutch was completely shot, so I redid all that. The brake lines were all shot. Every single caliper on this thing was shot, so I did brakes, like full brakes all the way around, full brake line all the way around, calipers, rotors, pads, you name it, it's all new. But that didn't really have anything to do with the car running. I did have to do the slave cylinder for the clutch, like I said, because it was literally full of rust. It was just seized shut. And then I did those guys there, and we hit it with some, oh yeah, I had to buy a new one of these. I can't remember the name of it. It's like a airflow meter, it says right there. I did have to put one of those in. Let's see, I think that's it, other than the radiator, which I did all that afterwards. But we got the car running, and at that time I already had a lot of it chopped off. I think it was right around similar to how this one's cut, not finished, but cut enough to tell it's gonna be a cart. Yeah, then we got this guy over here. This is where Miatas come to die. I am the Miata fucking king at this point. I'm gonna keep buying these things too. But yeah, here's the good one. At the moment, that bar right there is not gonna be there. We are going to replicate that side onto this side at a later date. I just haven't gotten there yet. That's why we just kind of tack welded it down here. And the only reason we left this in was because when we were welding the rest of the cage, we didn't want anything to move, so we did go ahead and weld that. And no, I did not build this whole cage. It came on this car actually, but it wasn't welded in. But yeah, anyways, let's get into this next portion here. Second part of, is it feasible? Okay, obviously, like I just explained, they're going up in price, and you're not going to get what you put into building basically this. If I went to sell this, I know what I want, but it's kind of a niche. You're looking for a niche of people that are going to be interested in even buying it. However, it is the funnest car that I've ever owned, driven, looked at. It turns heads everywhere you go. It is just, it's a car of the people. The people love this thing. It's fun as fuck. Pardon my language. Psych. I cuss all the time on this channel. But it is just the funnest thing in the world to drive. And it handles surprisingly well. It literally handles about how a stock Miata would. I mean, it hugs corners. It is super nimble. It's very stiff now with the cage, way stiffer. And that was one thing that I always laughed at, is people would be like, on Instagram and stuff, they'd be like, oh, I bet that thing flexes so much. Surprisingly not. When it is not caged, it doesn't flex any more than what it normally would as a stock Miata. It basically, it would flex a little bit more. Just basically imagine you're driving a stock Miata and you pop the doors open and drive it down the street, or take the doors off and drive it down the street. It flexes the exact same amount, and that is because this portion here is the door jamb, and that's all that's really structural about this car to begin with. Everything back here has nothing to do with this portion right here. The trans tunnel's thick because it's the main like support, and then there's mad layers, which mine are all rotted out and nasty, but there's just mad layers all throughout here, and that's what structures the car up. It has nothing to do with anything back here. Now there's a cage in there, so there definitely is no flex. This thing's like a hockey puck, literally like scooting a hockey puck across the ground. Yeah, it's fun. Anyways, that leads me into this next little portion here, legality. Really, there's nothing illegal about it. I mean, I do need to get the mirrors in. The side view mirrors got to go in. You got to have seat belts. You got to have all your normal safety shit. There really is no, I'm not saying I won't get pulled over. I'm sure I will at some point, but there's not much they can say, because it doesn't need a like an aftermarket like title of any sort or anything like that, because it's still a Miata. It's still a Miata chassis. It's still the original VIN number for that car. It's completely legal. It's no different than a rat rod. And in all honesty, it's actually kind of is different than a rat rod, because it's not a rat rod. It's rat rods. They have to have custom vehicle titles because they're said chassis on said drivetrain on said body vehicles. This is not that. This is literally just a Miata with no body panels, and that's not illegal. And really, the law, if you read the laws just state that everything has to be securely fastened. You can't have, you know, a fender hanging off, a bumper cover hanging off, anything that could land in the roadway and cause some, you know, damage to another person or their property. So yeah, legally, I don't really think that I'm going to get pulled over. The only ones I'm worried about really pulling me over would probably be state police, just because they haven't really seen the car that much. But all the cops in town, they all have seen it, talked to me about it. You know, they all seem to like it. So yeah. The number one thing I would say, if you are going to get into this hobby, is, for one, do your research. 100% do research. Two, I would definitely say have a game plan with the research that you've done. Compile pictures in your phone, see what you do and don't like. You know, there's a lot of carts that I've seen that I can't stand. I think they're disgusting looking, but they've done a few things on it where I'm like, oh, I kind of like that. And then there is a certain way to cut the car as well. Not that you have to do it the way I cut mine, but this is the standard way of cutting them. Doesn't mean you got to do it like that, like I said, but it looks the cleanest, in my opinion, And if you're gonna start cutting, you definitely don't want to just start hacking away. You want to do that little bit of research, take pictures, whatnot, because if you cut something that you're not supposed to, it's a lot more work to add material than it is to remove material. So you definitely want to know what you're doing before you just, pull out the old Sawzall and start hacking. I mean, you can do it like that. That's kind of the idea of it, but at the rate that these cars are cost-wise, is it worth just getting in there and cutting something you shouldn't? No, it's definitely not. And then obviously you're going to want to figure out how you want to do your tail lights and bumpers, things of that nature. A lot of guys, they'll take their bumper right off of right there because there is a frame rail there. I figured, fuck it, I'm going to do it a little lower, and then I'm going to mount it will have a hitch at one point. And we got some other little ideas that are going to happen after the fact on the hitch related to end of things, so stay tuned for that. Trunk trailer. I didn't say that. Yeah. Another thing too, definitely try to find a car that has a cluster that works, because these things are a nightmare to get the cluster working if they do not work. So I'm just going to get a GPS to monitor speed, and then I'll just hook up my own aftermarket gauges for oil pressure and temperature. The rest of it I don't really care about. Battery voltage, I already got a battery voltage gauge. What else? Interiors on these things, they're always buckets, so just expect that. If you've never owned a Miata before, you would not know, but for those of you who have, their interiors are junk, so just expect that. And I know I got these cheap ass eBay harnesses. That's just what I got for now, because the other harness will not work, and I'm kind of upset about that, but whatever. Now, I feel like I shouldn't even have to say this, but this is not... I'm sure there's people who are gonna be out there like, oh, I'm gonna do that to my daily driver Miata. No, don't do that. Don't do that. You're not gonna drive this in the rain. I mean, you can if you want, but I probably wouldn't. It's not a year-round vehicle, so don't do it to your daily driver. Unless you buy another daily driver and you already have a Miata, then yes, go ahead and cut it up if you want to do that. It's, for one, it gets hot. Everything on this thing is boiling hot when it sits out in the sun. That's why I got it sitting underneath this tree right now. It gets boiling hot. It gets very wet. You get hit by rocks. Dirt roads are, your eyes get devastated. Your girl's hair gets dirty. It's not your, this is literally just a toy at this point that can be street legal. It's not. Yeah, if none of those sound good to you, definitely don't start cutting on your car. I would not recommend it. If you don't care about any of those things, like me, 10 out of 10 would recommend building a cart. For sure. Funnest thing ever. Does not, like, tires are like, I don't care how shitty of a tire you buy. It could have the worst rating ever. It will last you an ungodly amount of time because they just don't weigh anything in the rear end. It just doesn't get rid of tire material. Like, the tires are just unlimited on these things. It's sick. But other than that, I think that's about all I really got to say. Safety. If you wreck this thing, you're probably going to end up in the hospital. So don't wreck. I would highly advise that. Don't get T-boned. Would highly advise that as well. Yeah. Join Miata Carts of America on Facebook. Super sick group. A bunch of just good, genuine guys on there. It's like one of the most least toxic car groups that I've ever been in, actually. And follow for more content, because we're going to start getting into some sick shit here soon. And hopefully you guys want to stick around and watch. So I'll catch you in the next one.